An old man in a faded blue uniform stands in the center of a glass-walled boardroom, steel handcuffs biting into his weathered wrists. Surrounding him are security guards, police officers, and Julian Vance, the 34-year-old tech billionaire whose net worth expands by millions every hour. Julian leans in, a cold smirk playing on his lips, whispering that nobody will ever believe a janitor over a titan of industry. The police begin leading the old man away, past dozens of whispering employees. But right at the elevator doors, the old janitor turns. He doesn't plead. He doesn't yell. He simply asks the arresting officer for his one legal right, a single phone call. He dials a 10-digit number from memory. The call lasts less than 15 seconds. He speaks only 5 words into the receiver. And within 3 minutes, every executive's phone in that skyscraper starts ringing simultaneously, including the CEO's personal line. The color drains completely from the billionaire's face as the voice on the other end delivers a message that will shatter his empire before the sun goes down. Welcome to HeartNest Stories, where every story reminds us that one small act of kindness can change someone's life forever. If you enjoy emotional stories filled with hope, compassion, and unforgettable life lessons, please take a moment to like this video, subscribe to HeartNest Stories, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our next inspiring journey. Now, let's begin today's unforgettable story. The 72-year-old hands of Arthur Pendleton were map routes of hard labor. Veins ran like rivers under skin weathered by decades of physical work, and his silver hair was always combed back neatly, no matter how tired he was. Every morning at 4:30 a.m., before the sun even dared to break the horizon over the concrete metropolis, Arthur was already inside Vance International headquarters. He knew every polished marble tile on the 80th floor. He knew which door hinges squeaked, which light fixtures flickered, and which corporate executives left their offices looking like war zones. Arthur didn't mind the work. It kept his hands busy and his mind clear after his wife, Eleanor, had passed away 3 years earlier. Vance International was an empire built on cutting-edge financial algorithms and defense tech contracts. At the helm of this behemoth was Julian Vance. At 34, Julian was dubbed the Prince of Modern Finance. He had inherited the CEO seat after the sudden mysterious retirement of the company's legendary founding investors 5 years prior. Julian was brilliant, but his brilliance was eclipsed by his ruthless vanity. To Julian, employees were metrics on a spreadsheet, and low-wage workers like Arthur were simply background scenery. It was a Tuesday afternoon when the storm broke. The 80th floor was bustling with high-stakes investors waiting for an international merger announcement. Arthur was quietly wiping down a glass partition near the executive suite when the heavy mahogany doors of Julian's corner office slammed open. "Where is it?" Julian's voice boomed across the marble floor, cutting through the ambient hum of typing and quiet conversation. Julian marched into the hallway, his face flushed red with rage. Trailing behind him were 2 personal security guards. Employees froze in place. "Arthur," Julian roared, pointing a finger directly at the old man's chest. "Step into my office right now." Arthur set down his microfiber cloth and bucket calmly, wiping his hands on his apron. "Yes, Mr. Vance. Is something wrong?" "Don't play dumb with me, old man," Julian snapped, stepping into his personal space. "My prototype encrypted drive, the master ledger for the entire European merger, is missing from my desk vault. I stepped out for 15 minutes for a briefing, and you were the only person authorized inside to clean the floor." "Mr. Vance, I cleaned your desk surfaces at 11 a.m., exactly as scheduled," Arthur said softly, his voice steady and respectful. "I didn't touch your vault, nor did I see any drive. I left the doors unlocked because your secretary was standing right at the front desk." "My secretary was at lunch," Julian shouted, taking a step closer. "The drive contains proprietary software worth over $50 million. You thought you could grab it and sell it to corporate espionage brokers, didn't you? You thought an old man pushing a broom wouldn't be suspected. I have served this building for 25 years, sir," Arthur replied gently, looking straight into Julian's angry eyes. "I have never taken a single paperclip that did not belong to me." "Search him," Julian commanded his security detail. Before Arthur could speak, the guards grabbed his arms, patting down his worn jacket and pockets. From the outer pocket of Arthur's janitorial coat, One guard pulled out a small, metallic flash drive glowing with a distinct blue status light. A collective gasp rippled through the gathered office staff. Julian grabbed the drive, holding it up like a trophy. Lying old thief. You hid it in plain sight. I'm going to make sure you rot in a federal prison for the rest of your miserable life. I didn't put that there, Arthur said quietly. His voice held no fear, only a profound, heavy disappointment. Save it for the judge, Julian spat. Call the police. Have them bring handcuffs. Within 20 minutes, 2 uniformed police officers arrived at the 80th floor. Julian stood over Arthur with his arms crossed, demanding immediate grand larceny and corporate espionage charges. He stole critical national security asset prototypes, Julian told the officers loudly, making sure the gathered crowd of executives heard every word. I want him let out through the main lobby. Let every employee see what happens when you cross Vance International. The officers, looking somewhat uncomfortable given Arthur's advanced age, stepped forward. Sir, turn around and place your hands behind your back. Arthur didn't resist. He slowly turned around, extending his wrists. The metallic click of the handcuffs echoed through the silence of the executive floor. Several younger staff members looked away, feeling a pit of guilt, but nobody dared speak up against Julian Vance. As the officers began escorting Arthur toward the glass elevator bank, Julian stepped in front of him, leaning in close so only Arthur could hear. You're nothing, Julian whispered maliciously. You're a ghost in a blue jumpsuit. You think life is fair? Money rules this world, Arthur. And I have all of it. You're going to die in a cell. Arthur looked at Julian with deep, unyielding eyes. There was no anger in Arthur's gaze, only a chilling, quiet pity. Money builds walls, young man, Arthur said softly. But truth breaks through concrete. The elevator doors opened. Right before the officers guided Arthur into the cab, the old man stopped. He turned to the lead arresting officer, Officer Miller. Officer, Arthur asked calmly. Under state law, am I permitted one phone call prior to booking? Officer Miller hesitated, looking at Julian, who sneered and checked his gold watch. Let him make his little call, officer. Let him call his landlord to tell him he won't be paying rent this month. Officer Miller pulled out a department mobile phone and unclipped one of Arthur's hands so he could hold the receiver. Keep it short, sir. Arthur dialed a 10-digit number. He didn't check a phone book or a contact list. He typed the numbers from memory with precision. He put the phone to his ear. The line rang twice. It's Arthur, the old man said into the phone. Code Alpha 7. The sprout is cutting the roots. Initiate protocol sovereign. He paused for 2 seconds, listened to a single word from the receiver, and said, Thank you, David. Arthur handed the phone back to Officer Miller, holding out his wrist to be recuffed. I'm ready now. Julian laughed out loud, clapping his hands mocking. Code Alpha 7? What was that? Your local bingo club password. You're delusional. The elevator doors closed, carrying Arthur and the officers down to the street level. Down in the lobby of Vance Towers, news of the arrest had already spread. Whispers filled the atrium as Arthur was walked out toward the police cruiser parked at the curb. But as Officer Miller opened the rear door of the cruiser, 3 black SUV vehicles with dark tinted windows pulled up onto the sidewalk, blocking the police car. 4 men in sharp gray suits stepped out, wearing gold lapel pins featuring a distinctive oak leaf emblem, the emblem of the Supreme Regulatory Commission and Vanguard Global Trust. The lead suit approached Officer Miller, pulling out a leather badge case. Officer Miller, Precinct 12? Yes. Miller asked, bewildered. Who are you? We are federal marshals attached to the Sovereign Board of Vance International. Take those cuffs off that man immediately. Hold on, Officer Miller said. He's under arrest for major theft. CEO Julian Vance signed the complaint himself. The lead agent didn't argue. He pulled out an encrypted satellite phone and handed it to Officer Miller. Speak to your chief of police. Officer Miller took the phone with a skeptical look. This is Miller. Within 5 seconds of listening to the voice on the line, Officer Miller's face drained of color. His posture went completely rigid. Yes, Commissioner. Understood, sir. Right away, sir. Miller hung up, immediately pulled out his keys, and unlocked Arthur's handcuffs. Mr. Pendleton, my sincere apologies. We were acting on incorrect directives. Arthur rubbed his wrists gently, smiling warmly at the officer. You were just doing your job, son. No harm done. Up on the 80th floor, Julian Vance was standing in his office glass window, looking down at the street. He expected to see the police car drive away toward the county jail. Instead, he saw the marshals opening the passenger door of a luxury SUV for Arthur. He saw Arthur step inside like a visiting head of state. Before Julian could process the scene, his desk phone buzzed violently. It was his chief legal counsel, Marcus Thorne. "Julian, get down to the emergency boardroom on floor 75 right now." Marcus screamed over the line, his voice shaking with terror. "What are you talking about, Marcus?" "I'm preparing for the European merger press conference." "Forget the merger," Marcus interrupted. "The chairman of the Global Trust just executed a mandatory governance override. The entire board of directors has been summoned. An emergency military-grade security is closing off all exits. They are auditing your personal accounts right now." Julian felt a cold shiver run down his spine. Who authorized an override? Only the primary founder holds that authority, and he died 20 years ago. "He didn't die, Julian," Marcus stammered. "He went into hiding. Get down here now." The room was deathly quiet. Julian's knees buckled slightly, and he had to catch himself against the back of a leather chair. No, that's impossible," Julian whispered, sweat breaking out across his forehead. Arthur Pendleton was the co-founder who walked away 30 years ago after the lab explosion. He was declared retired. He abandoned the company. Arthur leaned forward, his calm blue eyes looking through Julian's soul. "I didn't abandon the company, Julian," Arthur said gently. 30 years ago, when your father and I built this firm, we swore an oath that Vance International would use technology to uplift people, to fund hospitals, clean water initiatives, and create stable livelihoods for thousands of families." Arthur paused, taking a breath. "But after the lab fire that took my wife Eleanor's health, I realized something dangerous was happening. The board was becoming greedy. My partner, your father, started valuing profit margins over human dignity. So, I stepped down from public view. I put my 70% controlling stake into a blind, irrevocable trust, locked under protocol sovereign. If you own the company." Julian stuttered, his voice cracking. "Why? Why were you sweeping floors? Why were you cleaning toilets for 25 years? Arthur smiled softly, a hint of melancholy in his eyes. "Because, Julian, power blinds men. When you sit on the 80th floor in a soft leather chair, looking out of tinted glass, you stop seeing human beings. You see numbers. You see tools. I spent 25 years on the floor because down there, sweeping marble and emptying trash bins, you see the true heart of an organization." Arthur pointed out the window toward the busy offices outside. "I saw which managers treated their staff with kindness. I saw which young engineers stayed late to help their teammates. And for the last 5 years, Julian, I watched you." Julian turned pale. "I watched you cut employee health benefits while buying yourself a second yacht." Arthur continued calmly. "I watched you fire 50 senior staff members right before Christmas to inflate quarterly dividends for your personal bonus. And today, I watched you plant an encrypted drive in an old man's pocket simply to frame him because he noticed you hiding corporate audit files." Julian swallowed hard, looking around the room for help. But every single board member turned their gaze away from him. You can't prove I planted it," Julian stammered weakly. Arthur gestured to David Sterling. Sterling pressed a button on a control panel. The large digital display on the boardroom wall flickered to life. It showed internal security camera footage from Julian's office at 11:15 a.m., footage from a hidden secondary security camera system that only the master founder's security detail had access to. On the screen, crystal clear in 4K resolution, was Julian Vance pulling the blue flash drive from his own desk drawer, walking over to Arthur's cleaning cart parked outside, and slipping it into the side pocket of Arthur's janitorial coat, while Arthur was inside the supply closet. The room gasped. Julian dropped to his knees. The arrogance that had defined him for years evaporated instantly, replaced by sheer panic. "Arthur, Uncle Arthur," Julian pleaded, his voice trembling violently. "Please, I made a mistake. I was under immense pressure with the merger. The board was pushing me. I panicked. Please, we're family." Arthur stood up slowly. He walked around the table until he stood right in front of the kneeling billionaire. "Family does not destroy the innocent to protect its own pride, Julian," Arthur said softly. You called me a ghost in a blue jumpsuit. You told me that money rules the world and that I would die in a cell. Arthur looked down at him with immense pity. Money does not make a man, Julian. Character does. And today, your wealth cannot buy back what you have traded away. Arthur turned to David Sterling. Execute the sovereign protocol. David Sterling nodded, opening a leather binder. By order of the controlling shareholder, Arthur Vance Pendleton, effective immediately, Julian Vance is removed from the position of Chief Executive Officer. All executive privileges, corporate credit accounts, stock options, and company-owned properties are revoked and frozen pending a forensic audit by federal authorities. 2 federal marshals stepped forward, standing on either side of Julian. Furthermore, Sterling continued, criminal charges for evidence tampering, false police reporting, frame-up fraud, and corporate embezzlement have been filed with the United States District Attorney's Office. Federal agents are waiting downstairs. Julian looked up at Arthur, tears streaming down his face. Arthur, please, don't ruin my life. Give me one more chance. Arthur reached down and gently placed a hand on Julian's shoulder. I am not ruining your life, Julian. You ruined it yourself the moment you decided that other human beings were beneath your respect. Going to trial and facing responsibility isn't your destruction. It is your only chance to finally learn humility. The marshals lifted Julian to his feet and led him out of the boardroom. As Julian was walked past the glass walls, every employee on the floor watched in stunned silence as the former billionaire CEO was escorted out in disgrace, heading to the very police station where he had tried to send an innocent old man. The morning sun rose bright and clear over the skyline the following Monday. Vance International was going through a massive transformation. The headlines had dominated national news for days. The Janitor founder returns to save corporate giant. Arthur stood in the middle of the main lobby of Vance Towers. He was dressed comfortably in a simple suit without a tie. Surrounding him were hundreds of company employees, custodians, IT specialists, secretaries, middle managers, and senior analysts. Arthur stepped up to a microphone set up near the central fountain. For 25 years, Arthur began, his warm voice echoing through the atrium, I cleaned these floors. I saw the hard work, the quiet sacrifices, and the dedication of every person in this building. Today, Vance International returns to its true purpose. The crowd listened in deep silence. First, Arthur announced, effective immediately, the minimum wage for all facilities and support staff across all our global offices is doubled. The lobby erupted into cheers and thunderous applause. Custodians and maintenance workers hugged each other, tears in their eyes. Second, Arthur continued, smiling. We are establishing the Eleanor Pendleton Employee Trust. 30% of all company annual profits will now be directly distributed to non-executive staff members as profit-sharing bonuses and full educational scholarships for your children. Another wave of cheering broke out, louder than the first. And finally, Arthur said, looking around at the bright, hopeful faces, I am stepping down as chairman to serve on an ethics advisory panel. I am handing the leadership of this company to someone who understands the true value of service. Arthur motioned to a woman standing nearby, Sarah Jenkins, a mid-level operations supervisor who had worked her way up over 15 years and had always been known for her kindness and protection of frontline workers. Sarah stepped forward, shocked and tearful, as Arthur handed her the founder's lapel pin. Lead with your heart, Sarah, Arthur whispered to her. Remember that the foundation of any building isn't the steel and the roof. It's the people sweeping the floors. Later that evening, as the office building began to quiet down, Arthur walked out through the front doors of Vance Towers one last time. He carried a small cloth bag containing his old blue janitorial apron. He walked down the street toward the public park, sitting down on a wooden bench under a towering oak tree. He looked up at the evening sky, feeling the cool breeze on his face. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small framed photograph of his late wife, Eleanor. We did it, Eleanor, Arthur whispered gently, smiling at the photograph. The foundation is strong again. He sat quietly on the bench, watching the sunset, knowing that justice had prevailed and that true power would always belong to those who walk with humility.